Hello, I'm Christopher. Welcome to Challenger Tabletop. And today we're going to be doing another painting live stream. Continuing with the recent trend of painting miniatures for my Genestealer Cult's army today. And in particular, we're going to be painting a Genestealer Cult's Sanctus Sniper. So let's go ahead and take a look at the miniature. Here we go, Sanctus Sniper. I'm using an Astra Militarum Catachan Sniper here, an old out-of-print metal model, along with a familiar, plastic Genestealer Cult's familiar. They work as a team. Basically, it's the sniper and his little familiar guide, and looking forward to using these guys in the game. And today we're going to be slapping some paint on it. Let's go ahead and switch to the painting cam here. And here we go. Welcome to the channel. If it's your first time, I'm just going to be talking about Warhammer while I paint this miniature. And we'll try to get him knocked out in about 2 hours if possible. So let's dive right in. I've got my brushes out, got my paint, got my fresh water. And I'm going to try and do a better job than my previous streams of keeping the model centered on camera, and myself too, trying out a new angle here. So I got alerts on the channel now finally. I did my first 3 episodes without alerts, so hopefully I'll be able to keep making incremental improvements to the channel, just using the basic Twitch alerts for now, but probably next Tuesday I'll have some time to look for some better ones. Anyway, let's dive right in. I did want to start by probably putting some gray paint on the base. I primed the model black, and then I sprayed some white primer from a downward angle to try to get started on a gray base coat on the base. Because the base is going to be gray, and I figured that wouldn't hurt as far as being able to see the model a little better. So I'll zoom in a little more, and hopefully I'll be able to keep him centered here. I'm going to be starting with Administratum Gray. I stopped by the hobby shop to pick this up today, and a couple other colors that I was low on. But I did forget to get Pallid Witch Flesh, my favorite off-white. See if I can give this a shake. Got some orange tea. I already drank some coffee, so I'm feeling pretty good. My tea probably does not need to steep anymore. I'm going to pull the tea bag out. Alright, well, let's get painting. I had the idea to start on the base and the cloak. I'm going to be doing them both gray. The base will stay gray, the cloak will get a Agrax Earthshade wash. And I want to go kind of heavy on the paint on the base. Like I want the paint kind of thick so that I can kind of blend these little piles of rocks into the rest of the base. I have just some little sporadic stones scattered. Let's see if I can focus on it there. There you can see what I'm doing on the base, and I just want to slap it with some thick paint so it kind of blends the little piles of rock into the flat areas around it and makes them look a little bit less like individual grains of sand glued to the base. And the topic I wanted to talk about today is actually why you should play Warhammer. I was actually going to do why you should not play Warhammer. I've thought about both of those things quite a bit, but I thought it would be more fun to talk about why you should. I felt like I needed a little pick-me-up this evening, and why you should not play Warhammer was a bit of a downer topic, so we'll save that one for another day. But there are lots of reasons to pick up the hobby and game of playing Warhammer, and I guess the hobby of painting miniatures, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. So, first off, I guess the first thing that occurred to me is that playing Warhammer is a great way to spend time with your friends. And it's a social game. Unlike a lot of video games that you play at home by yourself, Warhammer is played usually face to face against another person. So I know for me, the excuse of getting together to play Warhammer is sort of one of the regular ways I see some of my friends, and it is a way that I enjoy spending time with others. Usually a game takes several hours. I like to host at my house, but of course many people meet at a hobby shop or something like that. And I quite enjoy having a friend come over for a game, setting up the table, having drinks and snacks, and just rolling dice and having a good time for several hours, sometimes all day if you're playing a really big game. And I know that when I make plans to play Warhammer, it's something I look forward to most of the week. And when you are working on the hobby of painting your miniatures, it sort of motivates you to want to get together with your friend to play. I know my friends who also paint are often looking to get together and play a game once they've finished painting a new model, because they want to see how it does on the table. And besides getting together with the friends that you already have, playing Warhammer can be a great way to meet new friends. Whether it's going to the hobby shop and just playing a pickup game against a stranger and having that turn into a regular thing. I've had Warhammer opponents that I met that way. Or if you're posting on a group like a Facebook group or a Discord server, not only do you get to know the other people who frequent it, but they can turn into people that you play the game against, or end up inviting over to your house, or become lifelong friends with. And I know that some people who I started out as just like a casual Warhammer opponent have become very good friends of mine. So that's my first reason to play Warhammer. It's a social activity. It's something to do with your friends. It's a way to meet new people. And I think that's frankly one of the best things about the hobby. All right, I got gray paint on his cloak, his, what do you call this kind of cloth wrapped around your head, like a do-rag, and the base, so I'm feeling good about that. I'm thinking while I'm doing, since I just did gray, maybe I'll just do some white really quick. I'm going to be using white on the familiar. I use, or sort of my color scheme I've got for my Gene Stealer cult, or for my, specifically for my Gene Stealers, is like white armor and, or, you know, chitinous plating, and pink flesh. So generally like pink head and hands, white arms and back. And so I'm just going to get some white paint on here now real quick. Probably going to need to do a couple coats of white. It is one of the colors that has the worst coverage. go. How's that looking? Yeah, you guys can kind of see. So, other reasons to play Warhammer. My second reason is the game is fun. Playing Warhammer is a good time, in my experience. And I do have some caveats. I mean, some people are going to enjoy it more than others. And I think that if you are a competitive person who enjoys competitive games, you will like Warhammer. And conversely, if you hate anything competitive and you don't like to compete and play games where one person's the winner, of course you're not going to like it as much. But for competitive people who enjoy tests of skill against another person, Warhammer is quite enjoyable in that regard. And it's also a dice game, so there's definitely luck involved, and that's also part of the fun of it. When you have a difficult roll to make, like say, you need to roll a 6 on a 6-sided dice, or else one of your models will be destroyed, it's quite exciting to roll that dice and get a 6. And of course that certainly does happen when you're playing the game, and almost every time you play Warhammer, you're going to have some fun, exciting surprises when you're rolling the dice. And some unlucky surprises, or ones that are maybe fun for your opponent. Like, of course, small arms fire. The classic is small arms fire hitting a heavily armored Terminator, and he's going to be fine unless he rolls a 1, and you or your opponent rolls that 1. Of course, one person's going to groan and the other person's going to cheer, and that's part of the fun, not knowing what's going to happen. And there's certainly skill involved, but the fact that you have to rely on chance to some extent, and the sort of dread or thrill that comes with that is, I think, a lot more exciting than you get from a game that's purely skill, like, say, chess, where you're really only going to have an exciting moment where you make the final move and realize you've ended the game. And then if you had spectators, they might gasp for one moment. But Warhammer has a lot of exciting moments, and anytime that you're rolling the dice, especially when the fate of your models, on the table is at stake, it can get quite exciting, and that's fun. Now, Warhammer is a game where you start with all your models alive and your opponent's trying to kill them off, and vice versa. So I would say that it is a fun game for people who can handle that kind of emotional stress. You put all this time into painting your figurines. You don't want to lose your army. I mean, you don't want to see your models wiped off the table and lose the game that way. So of course there is some sort of feel bad moments sometimes as you're losing your models. Players often get demoralized as they play if they are heavily losing, and you sometimes get players who don't even want to finish the game and do forfeit. But if you can handle that, or you go into it knowing that by the end of the game almost all the models are going to be removed from the table, and you're fine with that, it is a fun game. And you do also have to be able to handle losing from time to time, unless you've already lost so much that you've become one of the top players of the game and you're no longer losing. Or I guess I have played against people who were really understood the game well from the beginning and really had a great win-loss record right from the start, but you want to be able to handle losing if you're going to play Warhammer and still be a good sport, so that when the dice do turn against you, or you make some boneheaded moves, or your opponent just plays a little better and wins the game, you're not going to be having a bad time. So it is important to be able to lose with grace and be a good sport if you're going to enjoy the game. And something I enjoy, and I know a lot of players enjoy, is the imaginative aspect of the game. Usually when you're moving your armies around on the table and battling each other, the players have worked out some kind of narrative or story that helps them imagine that the battle is more like the part of a movie or something, or a story. And so you might be imagining that your space marines are defending a planet of Imperial citizens against an invasion, or perhaps they're trying to prevent the enemy from unleashing some sort of devastating outbreak, or opening a rift to the warp that's going to doom the planet. And that element of coming up with a story and thinking about it while you play the game is part of the fun that I think a lot of people enjoy, especially people who have a sort of creative, imaginative streak. So besides actually playing the game and getting together with friends, Warhammer is also a fun way to spend time by yourself. And certainly a lot of people who have to spend a lot of time by themselves for one reason or another pass the time by painting figurines or making terrain for the game, which is the decorations for the table. So I guess let me think for a second about what color I want to move on to. Maybe we will do some pinks. Let's do the faces, hands, etc. in pink. I'm going to use a Screamer pink here, and I'll do some highlights on this with by mixing in some white, and then I'll hit it with a wash of Carroburg Crimson to bring out the shadows some more. Just going to mix the paints on my brush holder here. So Warhammer provides a lot of opportunities to be creative by yourself, and painting really is a creative pastime in that, well, I mean, you can certainly paint some of the factions by the numbers, as it were, by copying the designs you see in the book, but really the decision of how to paint your models is up to you. And even if you do opt to try to paint them as closely as possible to the official color schemes, exactly how you go about it does require some creativity. Just for instance, if you are painting green Dark Angels, there's a lot of ways you could achieve that color green. You could go for a simple contrast paint where you coat the whole model in a thick coat of one color of paint, and then as it dries, it sort of gives you some built-in definition. Or you could do like I'm doing and start with a base paint and then come in with a layer paint to do highlights, or an ink wash to add some shadows. Or maybe you're going to go for a more metallic green and use something like metallic model car type green paint. Or maybe you're going to do what they call painting non-metallic metal, where you're going to simulate the effect of like a chrome green metal that's reflecting light and sky and ground, but you're going to achieve that effect just simply by using opaque paints where you are painting on highlights that make it look like a very shiny object, even though you're not actually using a shiny metallic paint. So even if you're following the designs out of the book or the color schemes out of the book, there can be a lot of creativity both in how you assemble the models and customize them, and in what sorts of effects you try to achieve. But you can really go a lot further than that, in that Warhammer is a sort of a hobby where you're encouraged to make the models your own. Like this one I'm painting right now, this Sanctus Sniper is a sort of a kit bash where I've combined a couple different models that were not intended to go together, and I'm going to use it to count as a model that in some ways looks similar. So there is a Genestealer Cult Sanctus Sniper model, but personally I didn't love it. I think he looks a little cartoony. He's got like kind of a big nose and some weird kind of goggles. So I'm not a big fan of the official Sanctus Sniper model, so I actually have made 3 different custom alternatives, and this is the first one I'm painting. And so I had a lot of fun picking out which sniper models I was going to use to make these, and tracking down some what do you call them, familiars on eBay, and ordering them and getting them positioned on the base the way that I like. I didn't have to do a lot of other customization besides placing them on the base, at least in this case. But some of my other models have really gone to town on combining different bits, an arm from one model and a head from another, and that kind of thing. And other Warhammer players will really enjoy seeing that kind of creativity, and we all have a lot of fun sharing pictures of our models on Instagram or Facebook, or just at the hobby shop. All right, well, that's really coming along. Pretty much what I'm going for on the familiar there. I see he's got kind of like a skirt or a loincloth or something on there. I haven't totally decided what color I'm going to do that, but I'm thinking probably gray like the cloak with a brown wash. Or I might do it brown, or I might do it black. I haven't quite decided, but I guess I have a little bit of time. I need to mix some more pink. So some other ways that people have really found enjoyment of being creative as part of their Warhammer hobby include writing fan fiction. Certainly there are a bunch of novels set in the Warhammer universe. Boy, I'm sure there's probably over 200 novels set in the universe at this point. But a lot of people enjoy, who are writers and fans of the game, enjoy creating their own stories and characters set in the universe. And artwork, same thing. I see a lot of people on Facebook who have created some really amazing, fun, beautiful artworks inspired by Warhammer. And that's a fun way to spend some time by yourself. And another one which sort of crosses the line between solo activity and social is cosplay. Warhammer cosplay has become very popular. And one of the fun things about it is that after creating your costume, and you get to enjoy the same elements of sharing pictures and stuff with the community online, is to wear it to some kind of event and actually meet and hang out with other people while wearing your cosplay. So those are a few. Now, I have left out creating your own custom Warhammer games, because Games Workshop, the company that owns Warhammer and publishes it, has sent a lot of cease and desist orders to people who have created their own games. And I think it's rather spiteful. Oftentimes these are games that are being shared for free, but they don't seem to like that. And they also don't seem to like people doing their own Warhammer animations. It was becoming quite a popular thing. Of course, the most famous and well-known Warhammer animation nowadays is Astartes, which was a very amazing 3D animation, which was coming out in little scenes, basically probably like a 2 or 3 minute clip at a time every few months. And it was becoming incredibly popular, and Games Workshop actually partnered with the creator of it, but it did come across like they were sort of making him a deal that he couldn't refuse. I get the impression that he was getting a cease and desist order, and at the same time Games Workshop was saying, hey, we'll pay you to come continue your animation series with us in an official capacity. And this went along with the release of Warhammer Plus, which is their animation platform, I guess, kind of like Netflix for Warhammer, with some other perks. I know there's an app, and if you subscribe for a year, you get a cool model. But apparently they're not that big into people doing their own animations or creating their own games. But you can be creative in creating your own twists on the Warhammer game. One of the fun things to do when you're looking forward to a game with a friend might be coming up with a custom scenario or custom rules or some kind of backstory for your game. So there's definitely some creativity involved, and can be some fun solo time involved in getting ready for a game in that way. Or you might have someone who creates a whole campaign world and then has friends come and play in it and acts like a game master of an RPG. So Warhammer can be a fun way to spend some time by yourself. Or if you have a ton of time, it can be a fun way to pass it. All right. Not sure what color I'm gonna go for next. But I will say that individuality in creativity in terms of the modeling and painting is definitely encouraged. There's a term people use, which is rule of cool, generally meaning that if you think it's cool to do something with your models, go ahead and do it. It's sort of like whatever makes it the most fun for you is kind of what it means. So just today, my friend sent me a video from Instagram of someone who had painted Gazkul Thraka, which is the orc war boss. And they had painted him in kind of like bubblegum colors, bright blues and greens and pinks and yellows. And they had mounted him to his base riding on a miniature skateboard. So definitely not something that at all came from the lore of the game or anything else. It was just their way of having fun with the model and making it cool to them. And pretty much most Warhammer players agree that, you know, your models are yours to have fun with, however you want to assemble them and paint them. And generally they're not going to police what you do in that regard. especially in the orc community, a lot of players glue extra weapons to their models just to make them look cool. Even though, for the most part, people try to be faithful to the rules that, or the weapons that a model has in the game. That can be a part of just rule of cool, as it were. So, other reasons to play Warhammer. One big one is that it has a very cool and engaging world behind it. Kind of like Star Wars, where you can really get into the lore and there's lots of books to read and a whole sort of galaxy to explore in video games and novels and role-playing games. Warhammer is the same. And you have lots of characters you can learn and think about, and you have whole different settings that you can learn about and explore in the game. Just as an example, in the Warhammer setting, the planet Earth still exists, but it's got a new name, sort of. It's called Terra, which is certainly a name for Earth in some languages. And since the game takes place in the year 40,000, the Earth has changed quite a bit from what we know today. And it's actually become devoid of plant life. It's sort of become like one massive city, like Coruscant, if you're into Star Wars. I'm trying to decide what I want to do on his pants. I'm thinking maybe I want him to have brown boots and black pants. That sounds good. And the pants are going to be a little hard to get at, so I think I'll do them next. And the descriptions of Terra are really amazing. I mean, you have cities that are just like miles high, you know, basically like skyscrapers the size, you know, the height of mountains. Massive bridges, kilometers long, where pilgrims are walking by the millions to come cast their eyes on the golden palace of the emperor, which is like the size of an entire continent. So really, the descriptions of the setting can be very evocative. Some of the other locations that are very famous in the Warhammer universe include the planet Baal, which is, or Baal, which is spelled B-A-A-L, the home of the Blood Angels. It's a desert planet where life is incredibly harsh and the people are incredibly tough and resilient, and also mutated by radiation and that kind of thing. You've got ice worlds like Fenris and Valhalla, which are sort of similar to the ice world Hoth in the Star Wars canon. You've got the Rock, which is the remains of the planet Caliban, which was blasted apart by a bombardment of weapons and ripped apart by energies of the warp. And the largest chunk of it is called the Rock, and it's made of kind of like a black stone, maybe it's obsidian, and the Rock has been turned into like a space station that's able to travel around the galaxy with engines and I think even warp capability on it. And it's always sort of wreathed in crackling energy and shadowy darkness ever since it was ripped apart. And the Dark Angels have turned it into a massive fortress, which is also like a prison where they keep the traitors that they hunt down. So it's a lot of fun learning about these different places in the Warhammer universe and the different characters who inhabit it. And many of the characters and their stories are well known to the players who enjoy discussing them and are always happy to fill you in with really long diatribes about them. For instance, one of the most famous characters in the Warhammer universe is Guilliman, one of the last of the Primarchs, the original super soldiers from whom the Space Marine legions were created. Guilliman is the Primarch of the Ultramarines chapter, meaning all of the Ultramarines, Space Marines, have been given his DNA to turn them into superhumans. And yet, Guilliman is bigger and stronger by far than any of the others. Being a Primarch, that's kind of their thing. And he's had quite a story in that, like all the Primarchs, as a baby, he was stolen away from Terra and hidden far across the galaxy. And his father, the Emperor, who created him in a test tube, had to, at least I think that's how they did it, had to hunt him down and find him. And when the Emperor found Guilliman, he had become like the leader of his planet. Like all the Primarchs, or I think not just his planet, but like a whole sector of space called Ultramar, which is one of the nicer places to live in the Warhammer galaxy, defended by the Ultramarines. And Guilliman went on to become one of the greatest of the Primarchs, often called the Emperor's statesman. He had a brilliant tactical mind, and he was also very civilized, intelligent, compassionate. One of the real sort of good guys of the narrative. And Guilliman was eventually, I think, wounded and placed in suspended animation. And he spent 10,000 years after the Great Imperial Civil War in suspended animation until recently he's been awakened and had to immediately lead defense of the Imperium. And since then, he has become basically like almost like the new Lord Regent of the Imperium. I forget his exact title, but he's basically assumed almost like the emperorship. And as the Imperium has been split in two by a great warp rift, he's assigned someone else to rule the other half of it while he takes charge of one half. And at the same time, he's also been working with some alien races, which is sort of forbidden in the Imperium, and has made him a little bit of a controversial character among both within the lore and among fans. All right, well, what shall I paint next? Maybe I'll just let's do those boots. I did get a new brown. I'm either going to use the XV88 or this Gorthor brown. I think let's try the new one. It's going to be a little darker, but I think that's good for boots. And I think I'm going to have to go for my smallest brush here. Or at least the smallest one I'm planning to use. Oh, let's shake this up. So the world is engaging. I suppose one of the things that's kind of cool about Warhammer and the universe, Warhammer universe, is that there's kind of something for everybody. In that there's so many different factions that each have their own flavor. That kind of whatever style of science fiction you're into, you can find something that kind of tickles your fancy. So I know that the classic example is that if you're a fan of Gundam and people piloting giant robots, you might like the Tau faction, who have very advanced robotic suits that they pilot. Or you might like the Imperial Knights, giant walking death machines that are piloted by kind of an aristocratic noble class. And or the Titan Legions, same thing, but the size of skyscrapers, I guess, or the size of buildings. And if you're more into the sort of nitty-gritty military type action with more like regular humans, you might like the Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarum in High Gothic. High Gothic is a sort of made-up language in the Warhammer universe that's clearly based on Latin, if not a direct meaning of Latin. And if you're more into the sort of super soldiers and the giant muscle-bound superhumans, you're probably going to like the Space Marines, or their even more elite cousins, the Custodes. If you're into the sort of supernatural, demonic possession type stuff, you might like the Demon Hunters or Grey Knights, Inquisition, or one of the demon factions. If you're a big fan of the movie Aliens and you like the sort of Starship Troopers, and you like that feel, or the stories about sort of swarms of aliens or bugs kind of coming at you, overwhelming your position, that have no fear and are super scary, you're probably gonna like the Tyranids or the Gene Stealer cults. And you can often kind of add your own twist to these factions too. Like the Gene Stealer cults are kind of like a cult that spreads through the Imperium in secret, that's actually under like mind control by aliens. But you might decide that's your faction you want to play, but you're gonna go with like a sort of a communist revolutionary theme and paint them all wearing red uniforms and go for more of the rising up against the oppressors vibe. So there's a lot of different factions. It's a really vast world with lots to learn, and you can often put your own twist on it or find the sort of the corner of the universe that appeals to you most and then hone in on that element that you enjoy. Warhammer is great if you like military sci-fi. I would say it's a lot more focused on military activities, battles, armies, engagements of like space navies and stuff like that, even more so than Star Wars, or at least just as much. And that's a genre that's sort of hard to do well, and you don't have a whole lot of options in that category in mainstream media. But Warhammer's definitely one for military sci-fi enthusiasts. I'm thinking I want to work on the cloak, and I want to paint those leaves on the cloak. it kind of looks like he's actually got real leaves on his cloak, and I'm not exactly sure if I should do them green or brown. And I'm thinking, since I'm going to do a brown wash on the cloak, which is going to make it look somewhat brown, I actually want to go brown on the leaves. And I'm thinking that just sort of from a story point of view, if he's got leaves stuck onto his cloak, they might be somewhat dead. It's probably not like he has super fresh leaves on there. They've probably been on there for a few days at least. So the idea that the leaves are on his cloak are already turning brown seems good to me. I'm going to use the same brush because they're pretty small. And we're doing the XV88 brown this time. So it's going to be a little different than the boots. And one thing which Warhammer does well, that again, it's kind of hard to find these days, is it kind of celebrates masculinity in a way that you don't really see too often anymore. At the same time that it can be kind of tongue-in-cheek or sort of describing a dystopian world, there are definitely moments of heroism that are sort of glorified and celebrated in this setting, and not necessarily in a bad way. I mean, I think that it's healthy for, especially boys, to see some examples of selfless sacrifice to protect others, and the idea of being physically capable enough to protect yourself and defend other people. And so I do like that you do have examples of sort of healthy martial masculinity in the Warhammer universe. And of course that's that, and the fact that it's sort of military themed are definitely things that make it appeal to a lot of people, especially a lot of young boys. And Warhammer is also the setting is also what they call grim dark, which I've never really heard that expression used to refer to anything other than Warhammer, so I don't know if that was sort of the origin of the expression. Probably at some point, I think there was like an introduction to the game of Warhammer in one of the rule books that described it as the grim dark future, or maybe that's like the tagline of the game. Something warfare and the grim dark future of the 41st millennium. But the way that it's kind of meant is that it's not necessarily a universe where you're always going to have happy endings and noble, happy people with good things happening to them. It's a world where there's death and destruction and hate and pain and misery, and that can actually be a really nice kind of distraction from real life. Reading about thinking about people who have it really bad can sometimes make the tough things we go through in life not quite so unbearable. I remember one winter, this was back when I was riding a motorcycle year-round. I was, oh hey, we got someone, Mortimer! Yes, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war. That's the sort of the tagline of the Warhammer universe. But I remember one winter I was reading a book about people exploring Antarctica while I was riding my motorcycle in just terrible rainy weather. And reading about people freezing in the snow made, Oregon rain really not seem so bad. And I think the Warhammer universe, the sort of the grim darkness of it, can really make your own life seem a little brighter by comparison. And that's part of the fun of it. Good to have you in the stream, Mortimer. Talking about why you should play Warhammer. I was going to do why you shouldn't play Warhammer, but that just felt a little negative. I think I'll save that one for another day. Are you doing some kind of hobby tonight? I'm painting a G-Sealer Cult Sanctus Sniper here. Custom one made from a Katachan sniper, out of print pewter model. So the grim darkness of the game and the setting is one of the things that's fun about it, that some people enjoy. Mortimer, been lurking, painting since about 7:05. Oh good, so you caught most of the stream. Awesome, welcome back. Mortimer is my probably most common Warhammer opponent. And we played a game since the last stream, didn't we? We played a game of my orcs versus your Imperial Fists, is that right? It was the one that we were talking about last time with the forging the narrative. And so we played a game where my orcs were attacking a construction site of his Imperial Fists. And we played 1,000 points. And the Imperial Fists won, but it was a close, high-scoring game. Really fun game. And we'll have to think about what the next one's going to be. We kind of talked about what would happen if the orcs won, but not so much about what would happen if the Imperial Fists won. Maybe I should switch it up and play another faction next. Or maybe we'll see your chaos on the table again. I know you, Mortimer, I know you have those, what are they called? Those chaos fighter planes that you, I think you haven't painted them yet. You ought to paint those up. I really want to see those on the table. So, you'll like Warhammer if you love learning tons of different characters. Usually the first, 18 characters that you learn when you're starting to learn Warhammer lore are the 18 Primarchs. The lore says that originally the Emperor created 20 Primarchs and 20 Space Marine Legions, but 2 of them disappeared. So Mortimer says correct, but working on reclaiming this Fire Raptor from the Black Legion. Alright, so he's got 2 Fire Raptors, and originally he was going to paint them both Black Legion for his Chaos Space Marines, but he's decided that, especially since they have so many bolter weapons, they would be awesome for his Imperial Fists, and I agree. And the really exciting thing about seeing you paint up a Fire Raptor for your Imperial Fists is that you've been pretty close to 2,000 points. So every time we play a 2,000 point game, I kind of knew what to expect. Now that you've got a 3rd Redemptor Dreadnought and you're going to have a Fire Raptor, you're going to have a lot more options for what to bring in a big game. And I'm going to be a little more uncertain about what your army is going to contain next time I play it, which will be fun. All right, I think I got most of the leaves there. Hopefully I got them all. I haven't quite decided what I want to do with his knee pad. Right now it's still kind of gray, and I think that might be fine. I'll just hit it with maybe a black or brown wash and call it good. So, oh, he's got some leaves on his gun? No? No, his gun is wrapped in some cloth. So I do have to think about what color do I want to do that. Maybe I'll do it the same brown. I like that idea because it's going to create a little bit of kind of coherence between the different parts of the model. I'll just mention one of the things that I love about the Warhammer universe. It's kind of a small detail, is that they have some mystery in there. So the Emperor created 20 Space Marine legions, and yet we only know about 18 of the 20. And the same with the Primarchs. We know 18 of the Primarchs, and yet we don't know the other 2. We know there were 2 others, and if you want to find out what happened to them, there's really only a few little hints, and they're scattered between all the books and lore of the game. Mortimer says his next Imperial Fist army is going to have the Fire Raptor for sure. Yep, that's probably true. So I think I'll expect a Fire Raptor, heavy intercessors. But I no longer know if I'm going to face Torgaradon, Apothecary, Chaplain, and I don't know if I'm going to face 1 Redemptor Dreadnought, or 2, or 3, or if I'm going to see the Hammerfall bunker on the table. You didn't get one of those Tech Marine turrets, did you? I think you kind of make fun of it, so I don't think you have one. But I guess I'll just say that the few hints we've gotten about those missing Primarchs is that one is called the Lost and one is called the Damned. And the Damned Primarch and his legion are probably the first ones to ever fall to chaos. We don't know for sure, but we've heard that the Emperor kind of kept chaos and the Chaos Gods secret from the Primarchs and the Space Marines. Probably out of desire to protect them from their influence. But of course that did kind of backfire. And perhaps that explains what happened to at least one of the Primarchs. And I think there's some clues that the other one had some kind of genetic defects that were affecting both him and his legion. And for that reason, they had to be purged. So that's my impression based on the clues that I've come across. But it's really fun for the people who are quite deep in the lore to come across any hint or mention of the 2 missing or lost Primarchs. And that's just one example of kind of the depth and breadth of the story that they've woven. And in terms of the story, there are a seriously large number of books. So yeah, I think over 200 books probably. And if you're just a reader and you like science fiction, especially military science fiction stories, 40K really provides tons of entertainment. The publishing house that produces them is called the Black Library. And the books are really overall very well received by the fan community. And of course there will be some that people prefer more than others. I know I've heard people say, oh, this book's not worth your time, or skip this one, but this other one is amazing. And I know I've heard great things about the author Dan Abnett. Mortimer, have you read any 40K novels or listened to audiobooks? I have only heard the first book of the Horus Heresy, which is called Horus Rising. And that was quite entertaining. I remember it starts off with the Space Marines having to subdue an independent empire of humans who have their own emperor, and some very advanced technology. They have like invisibility cloaks, and the superhuman Space Marines are actually such good warriors. They're able to fight against invisible opponents. Mortimer's read some of the Gaunt's Ghost books. I think those are by Dan Abnett, aren't they? I think those are supposed to be very good. Some of the major series are Gaunt's Ghost, Caiaphas Cain, and I think there's a whole Flight of the Eisenhorn series. And of course, the biggest series of books is the Horus Heresy, which tells sort of like the distant past of the universe, which is kind of like its creation myth, which is basically that 10,000 years before the present day in the setting, half of the Space Marine chapters turned against the Imperium, fell to the influence of chaos, and betrayed the Emperor and tried to kill him and overthrow the Imperium before the Emperor could complete his conquest of the galaxy, making the Space Marines obsolete and then get rid of them. I guess they saw that coming and decided to turn against him before it could happen. And I quite enjoy the lore of the Horus Heresy. The idea of the whole galaxy and inflamed in civil war, and these elite Space Marines who are more than a match for any other military, having to turn against each other and fight brother against brother. Of course, here in the United States, we went through a civil war over 100 years ago, but it reminds us of that. Or certainly of me. It reminds me of that. But the huge amount of lore and books surrounding Warhammer 40k is also a reason to get into the game and enjoy the hobby if that's something you're into. And they really describe kind of a limitless world or setting where there's really kind of room for everybody, and the players are even kind of encouraged to add to the lore themselves in some ways, like creating your own Space Marine chapter. The lore tells us that there's thousands of Space Marine chapters, or maybe more than 1,000, and not all of them are listed for you. And they do that so that you have space to create your own, and sort of in, like, at least, you know, in the sort of the confines of your own home games, to expand the story and create your own little corner of it. I know that, for example, in our campaigns, we've created a setting, our own little solar system that, you know, doesn't exist anywhere except in our own creation, called the Icarus system. And it's placed within the Warhammer galaxy. They have kind of a map of the galaxy, and so the Icarus system is located in the far northwest, which is kind of a play on us being here in the northwest part of the United States. And it would be at the edge of the Segmentum Pacificus, I think it's called. By the Ghoul Stars or the Ghost Stars. They've got some very evocative names. Alright, I think I got all of the straps on his weapon there. Maybe I'll just come back and hit these leaves a little more with a second coat. So the fact that it's such a massive, sprawling galaxy they've created also creates a lot of room for more and more stories set in it. So you really get the feeling that they're never going to run out of new stories to tell in the world. And as a player and a artist or a writer, you're never going to run out of stories to make up in the setting. And there's always room for them to introduce new factions of little new alien races or new species or empires, new types of mutant humans or strange new worlds. They've done all kinds of storytelling like time travel or pocket dimensions, computer simulations. There's kind of magic in the setting in that there's psychers who have psychic powers which are almost indistinguishable from magic. Got teleportation and portals to other realities like the warp. Alright, maybe we'll do some silver on his gun. I was going to paint silver probably on his scope and the barrel of the gun. And I think I want to go black on the tip here, but maybe silver on the very front. So I think I'll do that next. Shake up my silver a little bit. One of my friends once said that the best thing about Warhammer is thinking about it instead of everything else. And that is kind of like a reference to what you would call escapism. The idea of having your hobby time or your pastime be something that takes your mind off of all the other things you have to worry about. And that could be, of course, a good or a bad thing in that, like, you've got people who get sucked into video games or whatever else to the point that they neglect their other responsibilities. But as far as something to occupy your time and occupy your mind, Warhammer does pretty well. And I definitely sometimes find myself thinking about the game, like the next army list I'm going to run or the next model I want to paint while I'm at work on a long overnight shift or doing some physical labor that doesn't require a lot of mental energy. And there is kind of always something to think about with Warhammer, whether it's the latest story you read or the latest announcement about the game or about one of the factions you play or about that model you're working on, or the one that you just finished painting and you can't wait to play in your next game. So I kind of agree that the best thing about Warhammer is thinking about it instead of everything else, or instead of the rest of your life. I missed a little bit of brown strap here. Come back to that in a second. I think we'll do this part silver too. Now my brush is getting a little bit split end. Got to get that worked out. And I guess, like I said, as far as thinking about the Warhammer universe, it can make your regular life seem pretty nice by comparison. So thinking about a grim, dark setting doesn't have to put you in a foul mood or anything. You might even think, oh, well, if only I was in the Warhammer universe, I wouldn't have to deal with any of this drudgery. I could be fighting for my life. Or putting my faith in the Emperor. I heard Henry Cavill say something like he prefers painting Warhammer miniatures to going out to clubbing and stuff like that. And in some ways it's a safer thing to spend your time doing. And depending on where you'd be going and what you'd be drinking, it might even be cheaper. I grew up with an older brother who was 10 years older than me. So by the time I was 8 years old, he had left for college. And so I was often kind of like an only child, really, after that, I guess. And so painting figurines was definitely a nice way for me to pass time by myself. And then I guess I did want to talk a little bit about some of the value of the Warhammer storyline, in that it is a sort of a grimdark world that they describe, but there are potentially some benefits to thinking about a world like that. The Warhammer setting is one that's dominated by the Imperium government, which is a massive, sprawling bureaucracy and sort of an uncaring government that doesn't really protect the rights of, doesn't really believe in civil rights of its civilians. It's sort of like everything is subordinate to the military. And as far as the storyline goes, they say, basically that's the only way that humanity can survive is by fighting a never-ending war against all the alien races that want to wipe us out, which is kind of like, you could look at it as kind of a fascist utopia, as some people have interpreted the Starship Troopers setting or government. But in some ways, I think it's like a cautionary tale. And I think there's some real wisdom in sort of creating a setting like this and telling the story of the Warhammer galaxy to kids, because it helps them imagine a world where things are not exactly how we would like them to be. And I think kind of like a cautionary tale like that of sort of describing these dystopias is sometimes necessary in order to avoid them becoming a reality. I think that it's not a huge stretch to imagine the sort of Warhammer galaxy coming true. The idea of massive intergalactic bureaucracy that doesn't really respond to the needs of people is not too hard to imagine, especially as the galaxy is such a huge place. It's hard for any one person to really exert control for very long. The idea of control falling into the hands of a bureaucracy is quite rational and logical in some ways. And in our world history, we've seen how inescapable violence has been throughout history. So the idea that violence and warfare would be inescapable also in the far future is really pretty believable. And Warhammer describes to us kind of like a military society that we kind of even worry about these days. The military being so powerful that it starts wars just to continue its own power, sort of the old warning of the military-industrial complex. So I think it has some value as a cautionary tale. And then in terms of describing the ultimate fate of the human race, I think it's interesting because it kind of poses some questions like, if this isn't what you want, if this isn't how we should end up, then how should we end up? You know, if you are going to, by describing the sort of Warhammer future in such detail, it invites people to imagine what would be the alternatives. And I think that unless we sort of as a group of people and a species kind of aim toward the future that we want, we can easily end up in one that we don't want without ever really intending it. So the grimdark setting of Warhammer does kind of pose the question of what do you want the future of humanity to be, and what should it be? What would be better than this? And it doesn't give you the answer, but it sort of implicitly creates the question. All right, I got some black around the edge of the base there. That's looking pretty good. Might be time to do some ink wash on here. Oh, I know what I want to do is paint his little fingernails on the familiar here. Another job for the small brush. Using a layer brush small here. Picked up my model by the wet paint. Not what I meant to do. Well, got the paint off my fingers. I'm going to handle him by the top of the head here. Mortimer, what's your favorite part or favorite aspect to the Warhammer setting or narrative? I'd be curious to hear. The violence, the grimdark, the masculinity, the fact that there's something for everyone. Some other themes that you see in the Warhammer setting are genetic modification of the human race. The Space Marines are genetically modified super soldiers, and we are now entering the era where what has always been science fiction is starting to seem like it's really within the grasp of science. Now that we have we're starting to have functional cloning and genetic modification, and the idea that we could start to make people immune to certain diseases or get rid of certain genetic defects using RNA and viruses and other kinds of new techniques. The idea of creating genetic super soldiers doesn't seem too far away anymore. And the Warhammer setting brings up some of the problems and issues that you could run into with that, like, you know, meta-humans or superhumans becoming like a separate class, or even like a ruling class, or a military class. And some of the issues that that could create. Also, sort of the fragility of human rights. The fact that it's easy to imagine a future where the rights of the individual are subordinated to the needs of the state, like you see advocated by fascism. And I think that's an important warning to give people, that we may have it really pretty good right now, but if we don't defend these rights, they are not guaranteed. Also, the idea that the galaxy may be full of threats to humanity. We know that the galaxy is incredibly large. We now know that most stars are surrounded by planets. And it's not too outlandish to think that humanity may soon come face to face with other species from other planets with their own military capabilities. And the idea that the galaxy may be full of threats that are hostile to humanity is, I think, good to consider. My parents told me, or my dad told me, that the movie Alien was the first one he had ever seen that made him think that extraterrestrial life or encountering extraterrestrial life might not be a good thing. And that's also an idea that's present in Warhammer. And I think is a valuable idea. I myself hope that alien races are, if they're advanced enough to find us, they're hopefully also morally advanced and would be more like cousins or relatives who are helpful to humanity, but you never know. Tough love isn't always fun. I think I have maybe some teeth on this familiar. Let's see. It's pretty hard for me to tell. Yeah, I think he has some teeth right here. Now I'm getting shaky hand. Okay, good enough, I guess. Probably have to come back and hit the teeth again after doing a ink wash on his face. Probably want to do another pass on this white for the skull and his fingernails. Try to do 2 watered down coats when I'm using these kind of paints. I don't know why I didn't think to paint the skull when I was doing all the white on this guy. I think I'm going to move to a bigger brush for that. I already mentioned the entrenchment of bureaucracy. Reminds me of the YouTube series, The Banality of Evil. Bureaucracy is kind of can become a danger. We see that in the Warhammer universe, where the government is not especially responsive to the needs of people because it's so big and unwieldy and has so many moving parts and so many involved departments and bureaucrats, which is kind of understandable for a galaxy-spanning empire, but you could, we have parallels to that today of, veterans who can't get medical care because they're having to wait 3 months or 6 months for an appointment, or there's not enough budget to cover their services they need, or just regular people who can't afford health care while at the same time the country is technically richer than it's ever been before. And the Warhammer setting could help people to recognize that and think about those kind of things, which otherwise might not even register. Alright, well, we're getting pretty close in the base coat. The sniper has a couple bullets on his belt. I'm going to paint those in like a brass. Let's see. Why should you play Warhammer? I have a couple other points to mention. I will sort of jokingly say that There are more expensive ways to spend your time, like drinking $1,000 bottles of champagne or taking chartered helicopter rides, or I don't know what else, but there are more expensive things you could be doing. Maybe drifting and working on sports car. Could easily spend $10,000 in a year working on a sports car, and Warhammer's not going to cost you $10,000. Probably. It'd be pretty hard to do that, but maybe not impossible. Alright, what else do we have to paint? Did get a little bit of fingerprint on the base. Maybe I can wipe that off. We'll paint over that a little later. Maybe it's time to do ink washes. Oh, he's got a little bionic eye. I'll paint some silver on there. I don't know why a sniper would have a silver on his metallic eye. I'm sure he'd have a stealthier color, but this is a fantasy. I just want to make it look cool to the viewer here. All right. Let's see. Collecting Warhammer models helps the British economy, and I guess also your local gaming store. So there is some people who benefit. You're helping somebody. And now, I guess these days, there are some new, cheaper ways to get into the hobby. I suppose the models are more expensive than ever due to inflation, but you can pick up used models on eBay, sometimes at pretty good prices. Although, I guess there's a lot of people sometimes competing for those auctions, so it can take some patience to find a good deal. Gonna hit his cloak now with some Agrax Earthshade. This is a ink wash, brown ink wash, my favorite here. And I really overdid it on the last model on the cloak, so I'm gonna try not to be quite as heavy-handed this time. But it is nice that ink wash, you can just kind of slap it on and start pushing it around. Oh yeah, there's a couple, looks like a couple of buttons in the edge of his cloak here. That's what I'm going to interpret them as. They could be from casting, but I'm not sure. Oh, and I guess he's got a sleeve. One sleeve poking out. What color should that be? Maybe I'll go black like his pants. That seems to make sense to me. So I'm gonna be doing probably doing this wash on most of the model, except his skin. And then the silver on the gun, I could use a black wash there. Alright, gotta be kind of delicate with the big brush here. Trying to get the paint into the crack at the edge of his cloak. What else do I have? So cheap ways to get into Warhammer. So there's eBay. There is 3D printing. Mortimer's been getting into 3D printing. Actually, he's been into it for quite a while now, and has gotten very skilled at printing models, and printed me quite a few models this year. Of course, gifts. Some people get most of their models as birthday gifts or Christmas gifts, and if you can be patient and you have friends or family who like gifting you Warhammer models, that's one cheap way to be in the hobby, is just go at a slow pace with, you know, whatever you can get for free from players who feel like parting with old models, or wait for Christmas or whatever. Spend your allowance if you're getting one. But 3D printing is getting bigger and bigger, and we haven't yet seen exactly how Games Workshop is going to incorporate 3D modeling into their or 3D printing into their business model, which I think they're bound to do eventually. They seem to be kind of fighting it for now, and yet third-party miniatures designers seem to be having a field day making models that are similar enough to the Games Workshop designs that you could use them in the game. And certainly when you're playing at home with friends, I think most people are happy to play against 3D printed models. Although I'm sure Games Workshop isn't happy about it. That seems to be a bigger and bigger part of the hobby these days. And it's a lot more affordable than buying the model kits. Sometimes the quality of the designs is not quite as good. And there are sometimes other issues with 3D printed stuff. It can be tricky to get good quality 3D printed models when you're new to printing, because of course you get sometimes printing errors, or you have to kind of learn the ins and outs of your particular printer. A lot of good Facebook groups for sharing and getting advice in terms of that. I was going to recommend one I saw to you, Mortimer, called something like 3D printing for Warhammer Fascist Free Zone. Looked interesting. I don't know if you're already a member of that. Mortimer printed me some models this year, including 9 armored sentinels for my Genestealer Cult's Brood Brothers detachment, and 3 laser destroyers, which are kind of like an artillery piece manned by guardsmen. Gonna do the same wash on the pants or loincloth of the Genestealer familiar here, but I gotta go to a small brush because it's like a tricky angle. I hope I've been doing better at keeping the model centered, and I think I got a better angle on my face, although I'm sure I'm spending most of the video looking downward. Not a whole lot I can do about that. I tried putting the camera low, and then it's like you're looking up at me, which is also weird, especially when I'm not looking down at the model. But always willing to hear feedback in terms of how I can improve the stream. I did hear an alert when I was just getting ready to start the stream, like somebody subscribed, so that's cool. I do have an Instagram for Challenger Tabletop where you can see the models that I painted and some of the models that I'm going to be painting coming up. So far I've been pretty much doing them in the order that I had them finished, which is just something I've been doing to try not to have any models linger too long on the to-do list. I don't mind doing things sort of step by step in order to stay organized and motivated, but sometimes it means you're holding off on painting something you're really looking forward to, like my Genestealer Cult's Locus. I am really happy with my custom kit bash I've done for the Locus, and can't wait to paint that one. I used a Warhammer Fantasy Dark Elf Assassin as the base model. Now I see I went a little heavy on the ink wash, so I'm just going to use my brush to soak up some of the excess and put it back in the paint pot so it doesn't pool too badly like it did on the cloak of the Adeptus Arbites I painted the other night. Okay, there's some ink wash on his pants and on the cloak. And I guess I also have to hit this little part up here. So getting into the hobby cheaply, 3D printing, eBay, gifts, any other good ways to get into Warhammer cheap? Third-party models. Besides 3D printed stuff, there's also quite a few companies now that are creating models that are the right size and design to be used with Warhammer. And some of the ones that jump out at me are Victoria Miniatures, Cromlech, which is spelled Kromlech, and what else? I know there's a few others. Oh. They're escaping me at the moment. And then there is also the fact that Warhammer models do have resale value. And I would say the resale value of Warhammer models is variable. There are models that are 20 years old that are selling for $50-$60, where they were bought in the 1990s for $3 or $4. And there are also some that were that similar price in the 90s and now just sell for $10. So it's not like it's necessarily a great investment plan to buy a bunch of Warhammer miniatures, but assuming that society doesn't collapse, they are collector's items, and so they have some resale value for that reason. So just because you are spending a lot of money on Warhammer doesn't mean that you can't eventually, or your kids can't eventually get some of that money back. And I don't know exactly what my tips would be if you're trying to collect models that would have a good resale value. I do think that just inherently they seem like they were more valuable when they were made of pewter or other metal as opposed to plastic, which to me just seems like it's less likely to hold its value because the actual material itself isn't worth much. But it is a thing. You can, and then of course there are people who turn Warhammer into a business, painting models on commission or painting models and selling them painted on eBay for a substantial markup. It's not uncommon to see models on eBay that are well painted selling for hundreds of dollars. And turning Warhammer into a business can be one way to collect it a little bit more affordably. I remember when my brother was in college, he would buy lots of Warhammer miniatures, a box of somebody's collection of 100 miniatures, and then he would break them up, figure out what was what, and list them for sale individually and make a pretty decent profit off of it. And as a result, he would often have miniatures on hand, which he could give as gifts, or if he wanted to, he certainly could have gotten into playing the game. We did play some Warhammer Fantasy back in the day, me and my brother. He mentioned one of those games to me the other day. Said that, well, I was telling my brother, you know, I'm never going to get over the fact that I sold your old Dungeons and Dragons modules. You guys probably know the ones I'm talking about that are from, what, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, that had those crazy painted covers, sort of 1970s style artwork on the covers. My brother left a bunch of those to me, and when I was going to college, I thought, oh, I'm never going to play 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, and I sold them on eBay, and not for a huge amount either, and I always regretted that. I thought, oh, what a loss, what a tragic lapse of judgment. I wish I still had those, even if they were just sitting on the bookshelf. It'd be fun to flip through them, or get adventure ideas, or even just run one as a using the most current edition of Dungeons and Dragons, or to go back and play 2nd edition or Advanced D&D would be even pretty fun. But I was mentioning that to my brother, and he was telling me he kept thinking about the fact that he like made some mistake when we played Warhammer that gave him an advantage and helped him win the game. I barely remembered the game he was talking about, so it certainly didn't bother me. But he was saying, oh yeah, after the game I was rereading the rules and I realized I couldn't have done XYZ, and it's funny that it's still bothering him 20 years later, however long. But yeah, how neat that, you know, my brother has fond memories of us playing Warhammer games together. So buying and selling miniatures on eBay or other site like that can be a way to get into the hobby and actually make some money, and at the same time find some good deals, collect and save an army that you like while selling off the models you don't want. So that's another idea. Went a little too heavy with this pink wash. I'm going to try and pick some of it out now. Oh, I missed painting his hand on the inside palm. I'll have to get to that. Next, I'm going to do the same pink wash. This is a Karaberg Crimson wash. I'm going to do it on the skin of the sniper himself now. And you can see it really brings out the definition of the model on his hands, fingers. And I don't always do highlights, you know. My sort of basic like quick paint job is usually going to be a base coat and an ink wash. And I try to do the ink or the base coat bright enough that it sort of serves as its own highlight. But I will come back and either hit something with a highlight when it's when the ink wash is dry, or sometimes I will highlight it before I hit it with the wash. But I haven't really done much in the way of highlighting on this model. I'm definitely doing kind of a speed paint, as I'm trying to knock it out in about 2 hours so the stream doesn't go too long, and at the same time you get to see a model get finished. And I am going to be painting 2 more of these guys, although I might wait a bit because unfortunately I don't need 3 of them. We do have a new Genestealer Cults Codex coming out in a month or so, so I don't know if the rules are going to change, but after I had the parts to build 3 of these, or after I'd ordered the parts, I realized Genestealer cults have a rule that limits them to 1 of each character, and the Sanctus Sniper is a character, so I'm only allowed to use 1 of these guys per Genestealer cults detachment, and that means I could run all 3 as long as I run 3 detachments, which is allowed in a game of at least 2,000 points, which is generally like the standard large game of Warhammer. So it wouldn't be terrible to paint 3 of these guys. I could use them in a 2,000 point game and by running 3 detachments, but I don't know if that would be the most strategically sound decision, and I've heard plenty of people say that the Sanctus Sniper tends to disappoint them in game. I think he only gets maybe like 1 shot per turn with his sniper rifle, so the odds of having an unlucky roll and having him basically do nothing are actually pretty well, he hits on a roll of 2 up, so he should be reliable, but of course you might not wound and the opponent might make their save. So I'm doing a Seraphim Sepia wash here on the white, and basically what I'm wanting to do is just kind of dirty up this white armor, or chitin, how do you say it? Chitin. Trying to dirty up this white armor on the G-Sealer, but I think I will come back and hit this with a little bit of a white highlight afterwards to try to soften it, because it's giving him a yellow tint, which is not quite what I'm going for. I wonder if his belly should be pink because it looks fleshy. I don't know. And on his claws, I want to leave the tip of the claws white and just do some ink wash at kind of the base of the claw, so it kind of looks like almost like dirty tusks or dirty teeth or something, where it's kind of like clean at the tip but dirty at the base. If that makes sense. But we're getting kind of close to finishing this guy, and I've mostly finished what I had notes for regarding the topic, should you play Warhammer? So I hope that's given somebody an idea of whether or not Warhammer would appeal to them, or at least what I see as the reasons to enjoy the game or pick it up or get into the hobby side of it. Fun way to spend time with friends, gives you something fun to do by yourself, gives you something to think about besides your regular life, gives you a way to be creative or artistic. You can get into it without spending huge amounts of money. And why I think the setting is interesting and cool, and the value I see in thinking about setting like Warhammer. Well, I'm trying to do like a black ink wash on the metal bits, but I am remembering I was going to come back and hit the gun with a little more black in a couple different spots. And we need to paint this black sleeve here. How's your painting coming, Mortimer? How's that Fire Raptor coming? Gonna do his knee pad now. Yeah, just like that. Ink wash those bullets on his belt. And just kind of slap some black wash under his cape. Alright, I think we are starting to look pretty good. Do a little black ink wash on his bionic eye. Kind of bled into his face on that side, but that's alright. Okay, he's starting to look like a sniper. Okay, oh, I think I want to do some black wash on his boots because they're still looking a little bit too brown and not dark and dirty enough. And I have noticed that the ink wash does tend to darken as it dries, so it might go on looking not super dark, but it will kind of, the effect will increase as time goes by a little bit. I hate to drop the model while I'm painting ink wash because it tends to go shooting off of where you intended to have it stay. Okay, Mortimer says, still doing base colors. Yellow, red, and silver down, working on the black. Boy, Fire Raptor is a big model. If you're not aware, Fire Raptor is a flyer, and it's pretty big. It's like bigger than most of the tanks, and I'm trying to remember if it transports any models. It's mostly like a gunship, and it is loaded with guns. The really cool thing about the Fire Raptor is the twin, I think, Mega Bolter on the front of it, which, if you imagine like the minigun on a A10, it's got like an even bigger version of something like that, and two of them side by side. Yeah, it's just a gunboat, Mortimer says. So yeah, it's got some amazing armament though, and it's a very cool looking model. Personally, I prefer it to the what's that other one? The Storm Raven. And I recently got two Space Marine flyers that I'm looking forward to painting. I painted one. I got two Storm Talons, which is a model I've been sort of salivating over since it came out maybe 6 or 8 years ago. Is it that long already? And the Storm Talon's fun because it can rotate its wings or its engines, kind of like an Osprey. So here it is. And oh, where did I drop the the missiles? But yeah, there it is. It's just primed black, but that's going to be something I'll be painting pretty soon. All right, so I did have a couple spots I wanted to hit with black paint on this guy. Let's just fill those in pretty quick. One was his sleeve. And the other was on the tip of his gun. The ink wash is already starting to dry a little bit, which makes it pretty forgiving then to start painting on top of it. Oh, and the base where I handled it needs a little more black paint, and then we might be done. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Black sleeve, it'll work. Here's the tip of the gun that I wanted black. Give it a little dot on the tip. Oh, I did want to paint some kind of color on the scope, like almost like it's got a glow to it. Again, not something that a real sniper would ever want, to have a glowing scope, but since you're just trying to make the miniature look cool, it's just fine. And it kind of makes the scope look more high-tech. Let's see if we'll zoom in even a little closer so you can get some real close-ups on this guy. Let's see if I can get it to focus. There you go. Here's how he's looking. And you see the G-Sear is looking a little bit yellowy, so I'm not super happy with that. I want to come back and hit it with a little more white once the wash is dry. But I like how his fingernails are looking. White at the tips and just a little bit yellow at the base. On the back of the head of the familiar, you can see the Carroburg Crimson ink wash kind of pooled a little bit. I want to come back and hit that with a light pink to kind of brighten it up because it should be the lightest part of the model where sort of sunlight is hitting him on the back of his head. So that would give me something to do while I wait for the ink to be totally dry on the scope. And then maybe by the time those are both done, I can do some white highlights on the familiar. So I do have to mix up a little more pink with Screamer Pink and White Scar. You always want to grab your white paint on your brush first so that you don't pollute your pot of white paint with some pink. The reverse doesn't really matter. It's a little bit light. Let's try it. Here you can see what I'm talking about. Had a pretty tiring day of work today. It wasn't real long, but we were putting up gutter on a house, doing my construction job today. And here in Portland, Oregon, it was pouring rain and cold. So that took some real endurance. Of course, I rode motorcycle year-round in Oregon for a long time, so I'm kind of used to the rain. I can handle it. And honestly, I was kind of enjoying how tough it was. And we got the job done pretty quick, and my coworker gave me plenty of breaks to go warm up in the car. And I'll be doing that again tomorrow. Hopefully the weather is not as bad. Oh yeah, I was gonna hit this palm with some pink. Let's do that now. That'll do. I think I want that actually a little darker. I did actually look into getting some custom dice made by ChessX today, or I guess it was last night, for my Drukhari army. My Drukhari, I kind of chose one of the Eldari glyphs to be my like my army's symbol, and so I was looking into getting that printed on some dice. I thought that would be really cool, so I just emailed them to ask how much it would be, and haven't heard back yet, but hopefully I'll hear pretty soon. I think maybe I want to do a little bit of brown on his do-rag or his bandana headpiece here, because it came out a bit dark, and yet I don't want to go all the way back to, oh no, I guess it was gray with a brown wash, so I'm actually going to replicate that by mixing some gray with the brown wash. That's Agrax Earthshade, and see if I can basically highlight the top of his head a little bit. Unfortunately, this paint is already a little too watery. Going back to Administratum Gray. Is my tea still warm? Nope, but it still tastes okay. Okay, I think I've got the right color here. So I want to just, I thought the top of his head the sniper's head looked a little dark and dirty, where again it should be getting a highlight there. So I'm going to try this out. Yeah, this is good. So I'm just trying to kind of cover up those dark spots with a paint that's just a little bit lighter. And I'm happy with how that looks. Mortimer said, gave a good review of the new Dune movie. Really want to see that. Talk about another expansive science fiction world. that also does have some kind of military sci-fi elements incorporated into it, although it's more political and world building, I would say. And we also had the news today, or maybe it was not today, but I just saw that Henry Cavill actually said he would like to act in a Warhammer franchise movie or TV show, which doesn't surprise me at all, but it's cool because I think it's more likely to happen. Mortimer suggests a one-on-one between his Vindicare assassin and my Sanctus sniper. I think that if we both bring them in a game, the one-on-one is just going to happen naturally, which would be fun. Well, I don't know if I need to do a lot of white highlight on this guy, but I'll do a little. Vindicare assassin is the Imperium's best assassin, and he probably would be a lot better than a Sanctus sniper, but I don't know. I've got the power of the familiar on my side here. The power of the star gods. Also, if you have any ideas for topics I should do on the live stream, brainstormed a few. I play 4 factions, so I will probably end up doing episodes on each of those. Orcs, Drukhari, Genestealer Cult, I already did, and then what did I leave out? Dark Angels? Alright, starting to be pretty happy with this guy. I'm thinking about maybe hitting the base with a little more gray. What else have I forgotten? We're definitely just about there on this model. Oh yeah, I said I was going to come back and do, the scope on the sniper rifle. So here I have to decide what I want to use as kind of my accent color. That's the word I was looking for. I kept saying highlight when I meant accent, or I couldn't remember the word accent. So I think since I have kind of the pink skin, the accent color I like with that is like a bright green. So I'm just going to go for a Flash Gets yellow, and I'm going to mix in just a little bit of Caliban green to make like a lime green. And I'm just going to dab that on the sniper rifle scope, and then I'll come back and probably hit it with like a little point of white as like a little glint or highlight. So there we go. Got some green on there. It's kind of hard to see, but I think that works. And I was also thinking about trying to hit the back of his scope where he's kind of looking into it with his eye, but it's a really hard angle. There you see, there's not a lot of room to get a brush in there between his face and the scope. But I'm going to try. I've got my really small brush. Just trying not to hit his nose. Hey, good enough. I don't know if you can see, but there's a little green glint there now. And I think I'm going to use a little dot of yellow to kind of make the scope look a little brighter in the front. And here I'm just going to use solid paint, not watered down, because I just kind of want to be able to dab it on there. Like so. That was overkill. Gonna go back and get some green and try and fix that. Well, I ended up with more of a yellow than a green there, but not what I was going for. Let's see if I can fix that. it's still kind of, it is kind of solid paint, but I could still kind of wipe it off. Don't know if I'm really fixing it here. Alright, going back to a yellow-green. That's about the color I wanted. And maybe I'll just hit it now with a point of white to give it like a tiny little glint. These smallest details sometimes end up consuming a lot of time. Well, what else do I have on the painting docket here? Mortimer gave me a squad of neophyte cultists for Christmas when we had our game the other day that he had been holding on to as, or he had collected as planning to run him as a kill team for the kill team game. Kind of like a Warhammer spin-off if you're not don't know about it. And I guess he figured he was never going to get around to painting them, and why not give them to Chris for his Genestealer Cult army. And I had some fun last night converting them to carry shotguns. Shotguns are supposed to be pretty good in the new codex. Oh, there you go. I don't know how that looks. Good enough. I guess, you know, most of the time you're never really going to see the front of his scope unless you're down at eye level of the model. Usually when you're playing the game, you're looking at him more at an angle like this. But, yeah, I think that works. Alright, so what's left? I think I want to do a little more gray on the base and then hit the edge of the base with black again where I was handling it. And then we're done. So I want to paint up those neophytes. That's definitely on the to-do list. And I kit bashed a Reductus Saboteur, which is the new Genestealer Cult's character. And I really want to paint that up. Although I suppose I won't actually have rules for using him until the new codex comes out. So there's not a huge hurry on that. And I got some Astra Militarum characters for use with my Brood Brothers, including some Sanctus snipers, and I'm sorry, some Primaris Psychers, that's what I meant to say, and a couple Astropaths that I really want to paint. I think those might be some of the next ones I'm going to do. The Psychers and Astropath. Or Astropaths and Psycher. Just looking at my to-do pile here on my desk. I also made a whole squad of Weird Vein Psychers. Which... it's kind of on a whim. Weird Veins are like low-powered psychers who fight for Astra Militarum in a squad, and they kind of pool their psychic energy together to cast spells. And they're kind of bad at casting, but they have a stratagem where they stand next to a Primaris Psyker and they boost each other. They sort of... combine their psychic might and they both get +2 to their cast, and then suddenly they're not so bad. However, the Weird Veins are not characters, so they can be targeted pretty much from anywhere on the battlefield, and they'll die pretty quick. I don't think they have any armor to speak of, but you could put them in a transport like a Chimera, I think. So they probably have one turn where they pop out, cast their spells at with the, I think it's called Psychic Conclave stratagem, and then probably get shot off the table. But I suppose that's up to your opponent to decide if he thinks it's worth it or not. Alright, now I think last thing is just going to put a little more black on the base. where I was kind of messing it up earlier by accident. And there's that side done. Mortimer, thanks for joining me again in another stream. Really fun to have some hobby time with you. Mortimer's kind of been my quarantine buddy. Haven't really invited a lot of people over or done any parties or social events to speak of, but having one friend I could invite over to play Warhammer seemed like a nice way to have a little bit of social activity while not being exposed to a lot of different people. Of course, I did come down with COVID, but I don't think I gave it to you. By that point, I knew I had it, and I was quarantining. And I don't think you gave it to me either. I got it when I traveled to see my dad for his birthday in October. But it wasn't much fun losing my sense of taste for almost a month. All right, that is the base fixed. So I think this model is done for now. I'll put him on the spinner and we'll get a final look at him in just a minute. So I get my brush cleaned off and put away here. So first let's take a look at the model as it started here, unpainted. Here was where I started with this guy, although I did prime him before I started painting today. Got my little spinner ready and hooked up here. And I'm just setting up my camera to get a shot of him. Easier said than done. All right, ready for the reveal of the finished model here. Let's take a look. And here we see finished. Sanctus Sniper. Custom Sanctus Sniper made from a Catachan out-of-print metal sniper and familiar on a 32mm base. One of three. Got two more of these guys I could make. One is with the original Gaunt's Ghosts sniper. Mad Mulligan or something like that. I still don't remember his name. Oh, thanks, man. Mortimer says looks rad. I appreciate it, buddy. And my other one is with a Cadian sniper. So this will probably be the one I use first. Look forward to having this guy in game before too long. And probably against Imperial Fists, going head to head with the Vindicare sniper. That'll be exciting. And both of them have camo cloaks, which makes them harder to hit. Have I ever seen Trigun? I've seen maybe one or two episodes. You think I should check it out? I almost could have predicted you would like Trigun. I feel like that is totally your kind of show. And I did like Cowboy Bebop, although not the live action. I couldn't enjoy the live action Cowboy Bebop. I tried, but yeah, maybe I should check it out. Oh, check out Kane the Long Shot. This dude gives me mad vibes. All right, I will. Well, you have a nice night, Mortimer. Thanks for joining me in stream, and maybe I'll see you tomorrow. I think we will be painting a... Well, either a Primaris Psyker or an Astropath. I guess I haven't quite decided. But I'll post a preview video of the next model on my Instagram, and so you can check out what I'll be painting before then. It'll be 7 p.m. tomorrow. And you have a nice night. Thanks for watching. Good night.